Thank you so much for joining us for our 51st episode of YCP's virtual monthly series, Refiner's Fire, where Catholic business leaders from diverse industries share professional and spiritual wisdom in just 30-minute live sessions. In spite of the short length of these segments, we hope that the tips and insights will be extremely powerful for all of us as we strive to work and witness for Christ. The name of our micro interview series, Refiner's Fire, it actually comes from scripture from Malachi chapter 3, verse 2, where we learn that God is like a refiner's fire who seeks to purify us and make us the best we can be. And at the end of the day, that's the whole point of this series. Through the inspiration and wisdom of these exceptional Catholic leaders, we are challenged to improve in small ways in our professional and spiritual lives. So let's be open to this journey of refinement together so that in everything we do it aiming for that higher standard of excellence that gives glory to God. And for our topic this month, we will be chatting with Justin Fatica on the topic of embracing suffering, the path to true strength. And Justin, he is the executive director of Your Amazing Fitness and Hard as Nails Ministries. So without further ado, Justin, welcome in. We're very blessed to have you with us today.
Well, I'm excited to be with you, Derek. Pumped. And, my name, Fatica, it comes from the Italian word fatigue, to work hard till you're fatigued, to work with it. So I hope to not wear you out too much here today. But I definitely want to encourage you, Derek. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate the energy. I appreciate the enthusiasm and encouragement for all of us. And don't want to take up too much of your time, but would love to just jump right into it. And I would really love to just, kind of start off asking if you could really break down, the importance of embracing suffering in your lives and the importance of it for a lot of young adults as well. And really to dive into designing a plan for, our life and really encouraging people and what that actually means to you and the work that you do.
Well, the bottom line is this. Number one, suffering we cannot run or hide from. We don't want to go look for suffering, but suffering we're all going to have to endure. Suffering in your business, suffering in your family life, suffering in your mental challenges that, people go through your emotional challenges, suffering dealing with physical ailments, right? So no matter which area you're suffering in, why is suffering important? Well, guess what? Thy will be done. Jesus Christ had to say that himself. He had to say himself, let this cup pass me by. Like, why this suffering? But it's for a greater purpose. It's for the Father's will. So whatever suffering we're going through, number one, we have to realize it's for thy will, not our will. Like our suffering. For example, I coach basketball, right? And in coaching basketball, Team Amazing, of course, I say, hey, is there somebody in your life suffering? Who can we run this sprint for? And these kids, just last week, a kid says, my dad was in prison. Another kid says, my mom, she takes care of me all by herself. Each one of us go through suffering. We have to know that there's a purpose to it. Those kids sprint faster than ever. So we have to remember that our suffering, number two, is empowering someone else. We never look at the cross, Derek, and go, oh, poor Jesus. He must have been really depressed. Poor Jesus. He must be a loser because he suffered. No, we look at him with inspiration, with empowerment, with hope. So number two, suffering empowers others. So first, we need to know it's the will of God to suffer. Two, we have to know that, guess what? It's going to empower somebody else. And lastly, our goal in all our mission that I'm a part of is to make a world where no one suffers alone. You see, C.S. Lewis said, friendship is born when you say, you too, you've been through that too. And in our suffering, it will help us connect and relate in a deeper way, in an intimate way with friendships and with relationships. So suffering isn't easy, but it's a gift.
Yeah, I love the way you break it down. And, having myself grown up playing basketball, and I can only imagine the impact that you're having on your kids whenever you're able to, really help them understand that it's not just suffering for the sake of suffering, but it's redemptive. And I'm curious, not even just with the team, but I think everybody that you encounter in life, throughout ministry, throughout coaching basketball, have you seen a specific way that you've helped young people really understand that, yes, it can be uncomfortable and, we don't want to run to suffering, but actually encourage them. too, because it can be redemptive whenever you are able to offer it up for somebody and empower them to do so. Have you found ways that were beneficial for you to help suffering make it make more sense for the young people?
Yeah, we have a 6-part docuseries coming out on my basketball team. They filmed us for almost 3 years now, and it's critically acclaimed. It's winning film festivals. But in one of the series, my wife got interviewed, and I didn't know what she was going to say because I wasn't at the interview. You always wonder what your family's going to say. And she said, my husband understands this because he too knows what it's like to feel like he wasn't seen, he wasn't noticed. And I think we're able to help others to deal with suffering when we're able to admit that we ourselves have been through that we ourselves have been not noticed. So then when you're able to help a young person or somebody you're working with or another young adult that you're friends with, when you're able to say to yourself, you know what? Like, I know what it's like. It's not me being a guru. In our culture, we want everyone to be gurus. But for me, that's not what Christ asked for us. Yes, it's about team. And that's why I love sports in particular with the kids that I coach, because they can help us come together. But whether you're in a business, you have a team in a business. In that team, do you know what your teammates are going through? How we can help people through suffering is just take 15 to 30 minutes in one of your business meetings. Go, hey, what's the greatest challenge you're going through right now? Just test it out. You wouldn't realize how much that would help somebody, how much more thankful they'd be that you listened to them. So I guess to answer your question, the number one thing we can do is be transparent with the suffering that we're going through. And 2, as we're transparent, be grateful. Whenever people are like, you're grateful for your suffering? Well, Jesus was grateful to suffer for us. Mm-hmm. For I'm crucified with Christ, and yet I live. Not I, but Christ that lives within me. So I think we need to be grateful. There's nothing more beautiful when somebody's grateful for their suffering.
Yeah, I love that. And also, just a reminder for our audience as well, we're going to soon be taking questions from Justin towards the end of the episode. So definitely think of any questions you may want to ask towards the end of the episode. And to kind of go off that, I know we touched on before a little bit, just really a lot of these 8 encouraging disciplines that you use in your work and in your life. Would you be able to break those down for people that have never heard of them before?
Yeah, well, right now we need discipline, number one, more than anything. And discipline we can sometimes look at as like you're the kid being yelled at. This is the opposite. These are encouragement disciplines, and there's 8 of them. It's what I've been using for over 25 years, working with young adults and youth. And the first principle is encourage the who. You're like, well, how can you do that? I just went to the Kentucky airport last week. I was flying in from a conference and a couple speaking events. And I went to the airport, the guy in line, I was grabbing some gum or something. I just looked at him and said, hey, how's your dad doing? Like some random guy was like, so how's your dad doing? And he looked at me like, you know my dad? Right? I go, no, I don't know your dad. I'm just wondering how he's doing because I care about who you are. And he goes, man, I haven't seen my dad for a very, very long time. Right there, he was interested in connecting with me and in a level maybe he couldn't connect with somebody else. Why? Because the first discipline is encourage the who, not the what. What's the first question we usually ask people?
How's your day going?
That's what they're doing. The next question we ask, hey, what do you do for a living? What job do you have? What sports do you like? And you're like, those are surface level questions. But I think humans generally want to know, hey, do you care about who I care about? And I think when you're working on a team, or when I'm coaching a team, or when I'm working with our staff, or I'm a part, when I care about who's in their life, their mother, their father, their brothers, their sister, all of a sudden that gives them, of course, a biochemistry recharge of, you care about my paternal father, you care about my maternal mother, which builds serotonin and builds endorphins, right? But on a deeper level, that family that you care, wow, this person doesn't just care about what I'm accomplishing, they care about who. So I really train our team. So if you were to come into our 11 and under practice, Derek, you'd walk in and they'd be like, there'll be a kid, I swear, once in practice, hey, how's your dad doing? You know, like this 11-year-old, right? And it's so funny when a new parent who's just starting off on our team meets a kid like that. They're like just flabbergasted. They're just like kind of in awe of it. And I think if we can do well at that first discipline, now I'm not going to go through all the disciplines with that. I won't waste your time. But there's so many of them. Like the second one that I learned from Ken Blanchard, who's my encouragement coach, who wrote The 1 Minute Manager. He's like one of the greatest business leaders of our time. And he said, look, Justin, he said, we have to catch people doing what's right. Don't catch people doing what's wrong. And I said, Ken, why do you want to catch people doing what's right? He goes, when you train your mind and your soul to care about what people are doing right, you'll start doing right. So we got to stop looking at the wrong people are doing and start looking at the right people are doing. The Bible says, actually, it's biblical in 1 Peter 3:13. Now, what can harm you if you're enthusiastic for what is good? So I want to do that. So that's the second principle, the discipline that we really focus on, is catching people, disciplining ourselves to catch people. So after a practice or after a long day of work at our office, you know, we take 5-10 minutes to go, hey, who have you seen doing something right today at practice? Who have you seen doing something right in the office today? Just think if every office in the country took 5 minutes to get their staff that they worked in that office personally, the 5 people, the 10 people, the 15, the 40 people, and you got a cohort of 5 to 10 people say, hey, who have you seen doing something what's right? I'll tell you what, that discipline would transform a whole company.
Mm-hmm. I really want to go back and touch on the encourage the who.
Yeah.
Because I was actually having a conversation with somebody the other day, and just similar to you, of just asking, like, what are the first couple questions you ask somebody, of like, you know, how are you? You know, what do you do for work when you initially meet them? And, you know, your answer of like, you know, how is your dad doing, to a random stranger in the airport, or even like, hey, like what's been the greatest adventure you've gone on so far in 2025, or like what is the thing you're most excited about this year, whatever it may be. And in that conversation, I feel like humans with these habitual natures to our routine in our conversation, it can be hard to break those sometimes. And I'm curious for you, teaching, you know, your young kids and also other young adults that you work with, like, have there been practical ways that you've helped them to go from, you know, how are you in these surface level questions to actually going deeper? Because it almost might feel uncomfortable because you have no idea what the, you know, person's going to react to, or how they're going to react to it, or if they shut down in front of you. So I'm curious if you've taught your kids or your young adults any practical ways of how you know, been able to get them to go from surface level to really deep questions to open that up.
Yeah, we have something called invitation Catholicism, or invitation evangelization, that we start with like the what questions, get to the who questions, get to the challenging questions, and there's training involved with that. But I think the greatest way you can do it is when people see how successful it is. You know, test it out. Ask 3 people this week. How's your mom, that you know or you don't know? How's your mom or how's your dad doing? They're going to be either surprised you're asking a question or inquisitive of why you're asking that question. And you're just like, oh, I just know that I care about my mom, or I care about my dad, or I care about them. So I want to care about probably who you care about. You know, when they see you model it, you know, and witness it, it inspires them to care about the who. See, our habits end up transforming. How we get into habits are relationships that help us discipline those bad habits. Like if you go out and you're doing drugs, or you're habitual, with alcohol, or you're habitual with, talking negatively, it comes from a who that you had relationship with, who trained you on how to do that. So our goal is to be that person who has the habit to care about the who, and then they see that and all of a sudden they want to be that person. They want to care about who that is. That's why we go up to say, hey, you're amazing. Well, why do you say that? People go, you don't even know me. Why do you say that? And I go, do you have a mom? They're like, yeah. I go, well, do they think you're amazing? They go, yeah. Well, you're amazing to somebody. So guess what? You must be amazing. You must be a gift. And if that's awkward, it used to be when you were in the immigrant time of America that you would go to the corner store, and if you said, hey, how's your dad doing? It wouldn't be awkward, because we're in a new nation, that it's the new nation in America, where we were trained for what we do, for what we received. The immigrants were trained for what they did, for who they were doing it for. They weren't just doing it for their 2, 3, 5, 7 family members. They were doing it for that community of Italian immigrants, for that community of Hispanic immigrants. The most healthy families in our country that I've met, I've worked with, are a lot of the African families coming straight from Africa. Are some of, not all, but some of the Hispanic families that come, that they learn to care for their village. They learn to care for all their people. So we got to get back to that training, Derek.
Yeah, I love that. And before we get into some audience questions, I wanted to dive deeper and just to one more area, because I think from the time that I met you until now, and a lot of the things that you preach to your kids, there's one thing that's been really cool and evident to me, of just understanding this positive perspective that you have out on life, and all your kids as well too. And like I said, this you're amazing mindset. I'm curious for you, was it always like that for you? Did you always have that perspective? Was there a shift in your life where you went from maybe a darker place to really having a lot of hope and changing that perspective? Like, was there a light switch that kind of went off for you at any point in life where it switched? Or did you just come out on fire from birth, and you were saying you're amazing from then? So
yeah, no, yeah, it's been there's been a process, and I'll tell two stories to signify. I had a priest when I was 17 who I wasn't doing the right things, and he challenged me. But where the encouragement came from, at one point, he wrote me a letter. And I only got letters from my mom, just to be honest. Like, I never got a letter from a grown man. And so when he wrote me this letter, it said, I don't like you and you don't like me, but I pray for you every day by name. And I want you to know that what you are going to do with your life will make a difference for Christ if you let it happen. That who in my life, that priest who wrote me that letter, that saved my life. You see, and I say that term, that saved my life, because Jesus saved my life. When I accepted Christ into my life, maybe not for you or for others, but for me personally, I was so thankful, because I know, it's like if a kid asked me at an event, I've spoken at over 1,500 live events in the past 25 years. And in one of the live events, I said, what do you think I would do if I wasn't a speaker? And one kid, this cocky kid, raised it, and he goes, you'd probably be in jail, and you know what? The truth is, if we're honest, we all would be. The jail of our sin. And see, at 17, I really believed, that was the start, that Jesus saved my life. But something happened, because I was trained in America. I flipped, but not totally, with the you're amazing message. So what happened was I said, Jesus, you died for me. So it's transactional. It's like, you died for me, so I'm going to die for you. I'm going to do anything for you. And so from 17 till my son was born, which I'll share that story, I would do anything I could to say, you see, Jesus, I love you. Don't you get it? I care about you. And I would check off the list and do this and do that. But it was, to be honest, not all, but a lot of it was a transactional relationship. Well, my son's born. My wife goes through this horrific birth, 38 hours of labor, of panting and screaming and all of the things you couldn't imagine a woman to go through. The labor pains like you wouldn't believe. None of our kids have been through that, but my first son. All of a sudden, she has the baby. We're overwhelmed with joy and excitement. A few weeks later, she says, hey, I need to go to the shopping mart to get some groceries. Could you watch the kid? And I got to understand, I'm the youngest. I've never babysat a baby in my life. This is the first time I've been one-on-one. I'm usually like the Vin Diesel. You bring me in when there's a problem. You don't bring me in if things are okay. And I go, oh, okay. She goes, well, watch his neck. Make sure, if he's crying, pick him up. It gives me the list, right? She walks out the door and he starts crying. And I didn't know what to do. So I started talking to the kid, this little baby. I'm like, I love you even if you cry, right? And so he's like, stops crying. Then he looks at me with his eyes wide open like this. And I love you even if you look at me like that. And then his neck starts going like this. I start hearing my wife, watch his neck, watch. I grab his neck. I love you even if your neck goes back. And I was just joking around. It was one of those father moments, first father moments. And I started to cry. And the reason I started crying, I was like, yeah. And that's how God loves me. No matter what. No matter what. F's and D's are all A's. A great career or not a great career. He loves me, period. Well, I didn't know. I've been speaking since I was 19 professionally, getting paid to speak. Over 25 years. Almost probably 7 years, 8 years into it. I didn't truly know that. A few years later, I have a kid come to an event. I won't share the whole story, but he basically was telling me that people aren't amazing. And I said, well, I'll prove that to you. And I hugged that big football kid. And I was able in that moment, in that story that I told him, I was able to show him that, you know what, even though whoever hurt you and was wrong what they did, they're still amazing. You see, what I realized in that moment with my son was your amazing message is for every business leader. It's for every mom, every dad. It's for the whole world. That if we want to mentor people, we have to know that we're a gift. Not better than others, not worse than others. But we are sons and daughters of a Most High King who sent his son to die for us. And that's my message, the gospel, the basic gospel message. And I hope everybody receives that, whether I'm doing an event for Southwest Airlines or whether I'm doing an event, at YCP, or I'm doing an event at a middle school or high school, that everybody knows that who they are is amazing. Now, sometimes I can't direct hit, like when we open our Your Amazing Fitness gyms that are going to be open real soon. I won't start off with, you need Jesus. I'll start off with, you're amazing. And then they'll ask me, I know they will, why do you keep encouraging me? Don't you know who I am? Don't you know the wrong that I've done? And I'll say, I don't really care about the wrong you did. That's out of my operational jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. I care about you, and who you are is amazing. So that's where it came from.
No, I love that. And I appreciate you sharing those stories as well too. And I know we have a handful of questions coming in from the audience. I'd love to get to as well for you.
Yeah, go for it.
Awesome. So from Ali, how do you distinguish between necessary and unnecessary suffering? How do you find the courage to move when you're stuck in suffering, but something great could be beyond the suffering?
Well, Bishop Frank Caggiano, who's a good friend of mine, has been a great gift to me. He shares, like, when there's a mountain in front of you, right? One, you have to ask yourself, did you put that mountain there? So one is sin. Like, sin is unnecessary suffering. Even though we make mistakes, we have to say to ourselves, are we choosing to say yes to something that we need to get help with that is sinful? not like something that's not sinful. Something that is suffering that is not sinful, right? And understanding the difference is the other thing. Hey, is this being put in our life to protect us from something that could hurt us? Very simply, I wanted to start these sports complexes when I was 19. When I look back, I still haven't opened one up yet. I'm like, thank goodness I didn't open up when I was 19, 25, or 30, because they would have been closed within 5 years, right? Or less. He sometimes puts people in our life that do wrong to us, or allows us to go through something because we ourselves aren't capable of moving the other 10 mountains that are in front of us. So he puts that one mountain in front of us to protect us. And so we need to say thankful that we're having this stop, whether it's a career stop, even some people that go through anxiety and depression, that necessarily might not be sinful, but he might be protecting us from a relationship that might not be good for us, that we might not be ready for. So we have to pray and discern and ask guidance from someone. I'm giving you general things. Is it suffering? The only unnecessary suffering is sin. All of the other suffering, we need to be guided and have people walk with us to help us understand there's a deeper reason that God allowed this. And most of it is original sin, right? Most suffering is death is original sin. We wouldn't, if Adam and Eve didn't happen, we wouldn't have to deal with death. Picking up after ourselves, a messy room, like that's simple. That's original sin, the details of life. So hopefully that helps.
Awesome. Thanks for the question, Ali. And looks like we have time for about one more question here. So from World Blockchain Capital, how do you spiritually prepare for the tough times in business while balancing family life?
That's a great question. I get that question a lot. Number one, what's the mission statement of your family? And does it fit with that business? If you're in a tough time in the business, your family life has to connect with what you're doing in that business and the energy that you're putting into that business. So it's talking to your wife or it's talking to your children. Is this what's best for our family? Because if it's best for your family, like, oh, I've got to take care of my family, then you have to get through that tough time, not for what you're doing, but for who it's for. Because your wife agrees, no, you can't change a job. This is what's best for us. So you got your wife cheering you on. Come on. Or your husband cheering you on. Come on. You got to step up. We need you. You're not doing it for you. I think a lot of times we're not able to balance and prepare for those tough times because we're doing what we want in business, not what's best for our family. So you need your personal mission statement, your family mission statement, and then what's the business mission? And does that fit with your family?
Beautiful. I love that. Well, I know we're right at time here, and Justin, I personally just wanted to thank you for your time today. I want to thank you just for your witness out in the world and for just all the beautiful things that you're doing in your ministries and your businesses and how you're really just impacting so many people's lives. So I thank you for that. And from me to you, you're amazing. So
we're gonna have you're amazing fight, Derek. And make sure anybody out there just go up to somebody you love and say, "I miss you." That's a great encourage the who discipline question. Hey, did you know I missed you? You know how many people will say, no, I haven't heard from you. No, just look some of the eyes with all your heart and say, I missed you, because that's a great gift to miss people. But I'll miss you, Derek, until I see you again. All right, buddy?
You as well, Justin. Thanks again for your time.